This is Jamey Stegmeyer with Stonemeyer Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism or mechanisms in Via Nebula by Martin Wallace. This is a slightly older game at this point, but the graphics hold up to modern standards. I mean, it looks great on the table, and it actually photographs really well. Kind of the kind of a Charterstone aesthetic on the board. There are two mechanisms that I really like about this game, and they both have to do with positive player interaction. One of them is one of the core things you're doing in Via Nebula is building routes of green tiles, some of which are already printed on the board, and some of which you can place on the board. And those routes let you connect your construction sites to other areas you control where there are resources, or really areas that control any resources that are connected to your construction sites. And you're using these green hexes to connect them. So say I have a construction site down here. Right now, I am not connected to resources that might be right here. But if I or any other player, and that's the key here, places green tiles so that this green area or those resources are connected to my construction site down here, then I can use actions on my turn to get those resources. And I really like this because generally in the game, you are building paths to get resources for yourself, but along the way you are probably helping other players too. So it's both it's not negative at all, but it's positive in helping other players, and you're also strategizing as to how you can help other players slightly less than you are helping yourself, which I think is perfectly fine in positive player interaction. The other example of positive player interaction in this game is that, again, this is something I just referenced. If there are resources on this hex right here, for example, again, and I am connected to them to this construction site, even if these aren't my resources, even if another player generated those resources on that hex and currently controls those resources, I can pull those resources from that player to this construction site. Normally this seems like a bad thing, right? I'm pulling these resources away from this other player, but it's not actually a bad thing because at the end of the game, every resource that you control is worth a -1 victory point. The game is pushing you towards using all the resources you have into actually building stuff. And if you don't use them, they're leftover resources, they're not worth anything, and they're actually hurting you if you control them in the end. So even though another player may have spent their turn generating these resources, and maybe they want access to one or two of them, if I take away one of those resources, it's not actually a bad thing for them because I'm essentially saving them a -point at the end of the game that they would otherwise have to deal with. And once that space is cleared, they can actually take their worker back. You only have 2 workers. They can take that worker back and use that worker on another space. If you're watching this might remind you a little bit of Brass. And this is essentially Brass Light, a really light version of Brass. So if you really like Brass, but you're looking to introduce Brass to maybe a newer gamer or maybe a younger gamer who isn't quite ready for Brass, give Via Nebula a try because it felt very similar to Brass, but distilled down to a few core elements, including these elements of positive player interaction that I really enjoy. Those are my favorite mechanisms in Via Nebula. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below if you've played it, or if you can think of any other games that use positive player interactions like this on a map, where things you do might be helping you, but might also be helping another player as well. Thanks.